and
well, actually,
you don't say anything you don't want the audience to know. Okay, all those things we were discussing before this. Otherwise, we will be famous.
That will
we call our show Behind the Scenes and show them behind the scenes. You plan like a super fun show. So hi guys, we're back on You, Me and Her Tuesday evening, 5:30. My light has fallen down. Some crisis always happens, and that's the way we show down. So if you don't see me and I'm gone, it's because I don't have a light anymore. But I'm here, and I'm going to carry on with the show. The show must go on. Never mind the light.
You are the light of our lives. You are the light of our lives. That's all we need.
And as long as you don't disappear, we need the genie right now. Please don't disappear.
So the light is gone, but our guest has come. So I'm going to get her on the show, and then I'm going to introduce the rest of the show. Hey, our beautiful guest is here. Hi, Ridhima. How are you?
Hi, girls. I'm good. I'm great.
I'm going to take a minute.
Hi, Shalini. Hi, Sonal. Hi, Annie.
I'm going to take a minute to just introduce the show to the audience, even though they've been watching it every Tuesday and they quite enjoy it from what I hear. However, I'm going to do the needful. I am Shalini Arora Kochar, as you all, I would assume by now know. And my co-hosts are obviously way more popular than me because they are doing all the fun and frolic and I say no. So I have with me just Sonal. And my children always say, Mom, it's Sonal. I say it's Sonal. So that's just like Sonal. Say hi, Sonal, to everybody.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our show. Welcome, Ridhima, to You, Me and Her. Happy to have you over.
And then
thank you, Sonal. I think it's a pleasure.
We have also RJ Annie T, who makes us dance.
Oh my God.
24/7. Say hi, Annie, to everybody.
Hi, hello. And you know what? I can't compete with all their introductions. I just say hi. I'm not even going to try and compete with that.
Okay, so today I decided that before I was going to introduce my guest, I was going to introduce. Let me just fix my computer a bit, if you bear with me, because my light has fallen down. Before I'm going to introduce my guest, I'm going to introduce a few rules that we have in this show, because it's going to make it more fun for you all to watch once you know all the rules that we follow. And we have Shubham and Lata saying hi before I start saying the rules. So say hi, Sonal. I think some friends of yours are saying hello to you here. Okay, so the drill goes, the rules are, number 1, when Annie's maid comes to ask what she should cook for dinner, it's only for her. So we have to shut up and wait because the maid is me. Okay, this is rule number 1. Rule number 2, when Sonal is asking questions, there's a D&D. She takes her role very seriously and we comply. Just shut up and listen. When Annie forgets that we must speak on the show as well, we keep making faces till she realizes our faces have become warped. When Sonal and Annie keep talking too long, Shalini starts playing Candy Crush. Just FYI, guys. Don't give Shalini any questions prior to the show. She will do her thing anyway. Just grin and bear.
Yep. You've seen that on the list.
When the audience writes,
we do get serious. Don't run away. This is just a bad.
No, please, please. I think it's super fun.
When the audience writes comments Shalini doesn't like, she deletes them and blocks those people. Seriously, right? Only thing. Number 7, it's quite possible that one of the hosts falls off the show. It's not because she's fallen off her chair. It means technology is playing tricks, or a light falls off, like we just did, right? We do try to hold it together till we can bring her back, so hold on to your horses. The rule for the audience is don't play favorites, because we know we are all awesome. Just love us. Rule number 10, our loyal audience has no choice to join us every Tuesday at 5:30 on You, Me and Her, because we wait with bated breath. So thank you so much to all of you for watching us. And let me welcome my guest, Ridhima Sharma, who is a clinical psychologist, and she's been writing some amazing articles and deals with youngsters, and which is really the call of the day, because we really need to understand mental wellness for them under these circumstances. So we've got her here, and she's going to advise us on some interesting questions related to that. I'm going to take it to Sonal because I think I've taken my airtime for the day. So Sonal, it's on to you. And welcome, Ridhima. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Shalini. Thank you so much.
All right, so getting on to the show, I'll introduce the topic and then we'll come to the questions. Every generation goes through its own set of struggles, and today's youth is no exception. Although it varies widely as to what the issues are depending on who you're talking to, there are certain challenges that are consistent across boundaries, countries, and culture. Social media is a fabric of everyday living for these youngsters, but it does come with a set of its own problems, like privacy issues, body image, that actually leads to self-esteem issues. Then there is school, peer pressure, anxiety, depression because of the kind of exposure they have. Climate control is another very big issue that is actually playing in these teenage minds. And you will be surprised to know that the most activists in terms of climate culture are actually the teenagers. They probably realize that if urgent action is not taken, then they may not even have this planet for them to breathe, which is their basic right. So you see, today's youth have it tough. More so in India, because mental illness is still a taboo in our society and is not being addressed. It's high time we change our perspective and start addressing these issues for what they are. So we have today Ridhima Sharma, who's a clinical psychologist. She will talk to us about some of these issues that our youngsters face and give us some solution that we can, as parents, take back home. So on to you, Ridhima. And my question would be, what are some of the most common challenges that today's youngsters are facing when they talk to you?
First of all, before I begin with this, I think whatever effort that you guys have undertaken today in terms of mental well-being of the youth and also their caretakers, I think it is extremely important, because seeing the current situation, the current pandemic, every slightest of the issue is sort of, coming to us like a nightmare in a much more intense form. So I think, yeah, this was extremely important, and I'm happy that people like you have taken the responsibility to take this forward. To begin with, I think you have introduced the topic of the day and the issues very, in detail, while summarizing it all very beautifully. I think I would add on to it from my practical experience, in the sense that my interaction with youth, with teenagers and their parents, one of the major, some of the very major concerns that I observe is a major concern is, I mean, I don't remember a single therapy session where a teenager or a youth did not mention that how they feel that nobody understands them. I mean, this is one of the most commonly heard phrases during therapy, where children, youth, adolescents tend to feel that, it's so difficult for them to put their point across to elders, to parents, to teachers, and how they feel that nobody understands their feelings. And on the other hand, when I talk about the caregiver's end, you tend to hear similar things, in the sense that most parents will come up saying that my child does not listen to me at all. They just have a blind eye to what all concerns that we have for them. They just don't listen. They have become so stubborn. So, from both ends, there's this lack of communication where both ends feel that they are not being understood by the other. Adding to this, I think as post the age of say 10 or 11 years, I think a lot of self-worth issues arise. I see most youth, most teenagers, adolescents questioning their self-worth. you know, whether they are reaching the expectations of their parents or not. Are they a good daughter? Are they a good son? You know, um, and social validation also, you know, with questioning self-worth. I think there's a lot of social validation that they are aiming at. Another thing, another very common thing that I also observe is that somehow they end up feeling that how the world outside is sort of hostile for them, you know, in the sense that teachers are against me, teachers don't like me, my parents don't like me, which yet again is somehow uh, related to when I said that, you know, that whole feeling that I cannot put my point across, I'm not being understood well by others. Most importantly, I think of late, although a lot of platforms have started acknowledging this, but I think body image issues. Body image issues have become a major concern for most teenagers, adolescents. You know, they sort of question the way they look. They question the way others are perceiving them, the way they dress, you know, how their body appears, whether their hair are soft or silky or curly or, you know, straight and whatnot. So I think if I would want to summarize, then I think, yeah, these are some of the major concerns that I most commonly from parents, from children. Also, if I talk about the parents, and I think a lot of parents are having this concern of increased social media presence of their children. You know, most parents will just come up saying that the child is spending way more time on social media, using mobile phones, using tabs, and, you know, whatnot. So yeah, I think these are some of the major concerns which I would say.
So you talked about how these youngsters or the youth have a problem in like they feel like nobody understands them. And I think from being a parent, I especially this generation, we are actually trying very hard to bridge that gap. So where are we going wrong, or what is it that we should do? Are these problems genuine, or are they actually coming out of, you know, some hormonal changes that they're going through, or is it a family situation? Because it seems, you know, with a lot of parents that everybody is trying their best to actually bridge that gap. You know, I can't talk about the entire section. So where is that? Where's the gap? What are we missing out on that they feel that?
That's a very good question. That, you know, despite trying our best, despite putting in our best efforts, why this gap? So I think to begin with, first of all, I think children these days are exposed to way more stimuli that we could ever imagine. You know, instead of so initially, like, you know, while I was in school, it used to be us spending more time with parents, and then the second used to be school. You know, like if you just bifurcate the number of hours that we in school used to spend, it used to be more with parents, and then came school. But I think these days social media has outnumbered the number of hours spent with parents and even at school. So constantly, you know, there is someone who can say some kind of an virtual support system that adolescents are somehow resorting to. You know, instead of resorting to real support systems like parents and friends, they have somehow resorted to a virtual support system, and it's somehow like supposedly support system, because it's not actually that supportive, if you see. But you know, you have someone out there for you 24/7, you know, through social media. And imagine how supportive it might be for a teenager who is finding it so hard to, you know, connect with the world outside, with the real world outside. So, you know, social media, or say virtual mediums for that matter have become very non-threatening source, a very non-threatening supporting system also, and also a defense mechanism, you know. And at the same time, also, if you talk about parenting, you said quite correctly. I mean, there is absolutely no parent who can say that I've not tried enough for my child. In their own personal capacities, I think every parent is working with the mindset of doing the best for their kids, doing the best for their children. But I think there's this whole lot of communication gap that has come up, you know, saying things in the correct way, learning to communicate in the most appropriate way with your kids. Also, I think one mistake, I mean, I don't know if I should really call it a mistake, because it is coming from a lot from our social conditioning, the way we have been conditioned. We tend to put our parents at a very higher pedestal, in the sense that, you know, children tend to think that my parents cannot be anything else but perfect. But at the same time, I think parents are individuals first. This is something that I keep sharing with the with the young adults that I talk to, with the adolescents that I talk to, that, you know, they always I mean, they just cannot imagine their parents to go wrong. You know, I mean, how can my mother do something so wrong, or maybe how can my father do something so wrong? So, and also somewhere we have been socially conditioned in the way, and also we have observed our parents and grandparents do it, is that I think somehow we are not absolutely honest with our own kids, in the sense that we hesitate so much in opening our own vulnerabilities in front of our children, in sharing our own shortcomings in front of our children, you know. And that's where we end up communicating that, you know, there has to be nothing but perfection. I mean, there cannot be anything else but perfection. And because of that whole thing, that, you know, we are not able to communicate in the most appropriate way with our own kids, and that tends to create a lot of confusion. And I think at the core of, so, you know, whenever a parent comes to me with their child, something which I have most commonly observed is that at the core of every issue that a parent is facing with the child, there is a disturbed parent-child relationship that needs to be worked upon. Even the slightest of issue, like, you know, when a parent comes and says ki, you know, school ka kaam nahi kar raha hai theek se, you know, the child is not performing well at school and not listening to me, at the core of it is a disturbed parent-child relationship that needs to be explored. So I think instead of focusing on the superficial behavioral issue that, you know, the child is not listening to me but watching TV all day, is not exercising and whatnot, I think the core root is nothing but a disturbed parent-child relationship majorly. Also, I think, Sonal, you talked about the biological causes. You know, if I talk about any psychological issue or mental health concern for that matter, biology has only 1/3 of a role to play. Rest 2/3 is dominated by psychosocial factors. But nevertheless, since the age group that we are talking about, of course, biological issues cannot be ignored. Hormones do have a role to play. You know, sometimes we find our children being chirchira for no reason. You know, they'll just brush you off. You know, you just tell them something and they'll just totally flare up for no reason, and you just end up wondering that what did I even say? So yeah, sometimes hormones can have a role to play, but I think majorly it's the psychosocial causes.
Okay. Annie, you want to take over from here?
Well, yeah. Hi, Ridhima. Great to be talking to you. I mean, really
I am.
interesting stuff, actually. You know, I wish I'd even talked to you before now, coming to think of this. Now, I've been doing a bit of reading, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously you're the expert here. I'm not. You know, so I
My
have been
gosh.
looking at some. So I have been looking at some articles, you know, and I've seen like over the last 5 years, we've had quite a kind of an increase in, say, depression and anxiety, you know, where about 40,000 kind of youngsters have been affected. 1 in 4 have been, committing suicide. And, you know, the WHO have put India at the top of the table of depression. And so,
Right.
and we've had, you know, for years, we've had articles and people saying, ye karo, wo karo, do this, do that. But something is obviously not working. So, you know, what are the techniques that aren't working anymore now with the newer generation? And especially, I think there's an increase, especially in the 18 to 24-year-olds. I could be wrong. There seems to be a lot of pressure there. So what are the old techniques that just do not work anymore for our youngsters?
Yeah, I think that's a very relevant point to make here, because this is something which I also keep on telling people when it comes to spreading sensitization on mental health. There's a very beautiful quote that I had once read that, never raise your kids the way your parents raised you, because you are not raising your kids for the same time for which your parents raised you, which means that, most of us as parents have borrowed our parenting skills from our own parents. But I think somehow we, even if you deny that, I am sure some part of your parenting is a reflection of the parenting that you have received as a child. So, somehow we end up seeing our kids in the same time frame as we were, as kids. I just hear most parents telling, that when I was my child's age, I was doing this, I was doing that, and look at this girl or this boy, she is barely doing anything. So, we constantly tend to draw comparisons and fail to accept the times have changed. And since the times have changed, our way of parenting, the measures that we adopt need to change. Another very important thing in the Indian cultural context, especially if I talk about, is that, because I have worked a lot with the underprivileged communities, and you will be shocked to know that there is no exact word in their vocabulary which translates to depression.
Wow.
Even if I talk about our own mother tongue, Hindi, can you give me the best word for depression?
I don't know, actually. I'm the wrong person to ask.
Thank you very much.
मन नहीं लग रहा है, सुस्ती आ रही है. I don't know.
Yes.
You're so right. Even if there is a word, we don't even know about
There
it.
is no word for depression.
Yeah, and it shows a lot about our culture.
Yeah. So, about a lot of mental health concerns, we absolutely have no words in Hindi, in our own mother tongue. So it is almost like Indians are not supposed to experience depression or what, or maybe depression or anxiety is a concern of the West. I mean, is that the mindset with which we are working with? That's why we don't have an appropriate word, in our mother tongue, maybe. So, imagine when we talk about depression, anxiety, it somehow makes me feel that we are sort of speaking it from a privileged pedestal, because we are socially, economically privileged. That's why it is easier for us to talk. But imagine for people who actually do not enjoy that privilege. For them, depression, anxiety have no meaning. All they are concerned about is, having a livelihood, procuring 2 square meals a day. I mean, that's it. So I think one of the major reasons that for a longer time parents have been ignoring this is because they think that this is something which we do not experience.
Right. So we're not tackling it.
Parents. Yeah. So, parents will outrightly deny, how can the child even think of suicide? This is not acceptable in our culture. That's the same thing how for a longer period of time separation and divorce somehow face the same issue, you know, where
Yeah.
parents used to just outrightly deny that there can absolutely be no explanation for undergoing a separation or a divorce. I think similar is the condition of mental health issues in India.
Right. So they're not really thinking about the child, they're making the issue about themselves. Is that what you're saying, really?
Exactly.
Right. You know, and what I found interesting, you know, when we were putting your information together, we were trying to get the name and trying to get the promo out. You know what really interested me was when Sonal mentioned, you know, that Ridhima does, she chooses eclectic, you know, these very far out approaches to deal with certain issues nowadays. Now, that was really interesting to me. So what kind of new approaches are you looking at and therapies for youngsters today?
So, if I talk about today, I think therapeutic approaches have evolved to a great extent, and I think in India we actually have access to one of the best professionals who are practicing and also teaching those therapeutic techniques. When I look at working with teenagers or young adults, I feel, somewhere we think that therapy has to be largely about talking, and talking. While for most young adults, for most teenagers, talking may not be everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah.
You know, not everyone is comfortable in verbalizing their own issues, knowing that most of the time we are trying to make sense of our own thoughts. So when you have not even made the sense of your own thoughts in your own head, how can you even verbalize it? So I think approaches like art-based therapy, you know, which are very non-judgmental, and they require very limited vocalization, very limited verbalization, while at the same time they work at a very deeper level. So I think approaches like these are gaining popularity, and also they have showed tremendous results as well.
Yeah, so how does that work though? How does painting or creating something work though? How does it help the child?
So actually, you know, if you look at the literature work of very famous writers and authors, and if you look at the creations of some of the very popular painters like Van Gogh and Picasso, somehow they have ended up reflecting their psyche in their creations. Da Vinci and whatnot. I mean, it could be, Mozart, or, for that matter, any artist somehow ends up putting his own psyche. The creation is somehow the reflection of an artist's own psyche. And that can be very, very therapeutic in the sense that it can provide a very non-judgmental release of your own conflicts, of your pent up emotions.
Right.
So,
and you found it to be very effective.
That's
actually, yes, I think it's
great. Okay,
I think that's a great way to get into a child's imagination. I think that's super awesome.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of questions, but you were absolutely right about what you said, that, the beliefs that children have are actually because of the well-meaning parents, because we're comparing them to neighbors. We're saying, oh, so-and-so's child is doing so well, and why don't you do that? So I think these are what form the beliefs as the child grows up. And I think we parents need to fix our comparison and relative story there. But before I ask the question, I do want to address one or two things that the audiences have said. So Lata has mentioned a very nice point, saying giving kids a lot of validation and confidence is so important. It'll reduce the risks of kids falling in the trap of peer pressure, leading to social anxiety and other issues, some as extreme as suicides. So she's absolutely spot on. I just want to read it out because I thought that was a very interesting thing. We also have Harjeet, who had a question which I would like you to address. He was, in fact, very keen to find out if there was a way that he could come in the show and ask it. But I couldn't figure out how to get him on the show. So I'm just going to read it out, Harjeet, for you. Bear with me. He says, I run a rehab school with 264 kids and a regular school with 3,500 kids in Bangalore. Mental health in kids is a denial syndrome for most parents. While there are 100 different ways to address this, we would mainly like to know more about how to break the ice with the kids and encourage them to go for tests and therapy or at least assessment.
Okay, I think that's a very relevant question to ask, and also one of the major challenges that I as a professional have faced in my early years also. So now there are two things. One is that, when we are talking about parents not accepting mental health concern, so we need to understand that from where is it coming. It's coming from the fact that, the parents are sort of thinking what repercussions that they can face from the society if they declare that their child is undergoing a mental health concern. So it's all because of it's all coming from that social conditioning somehow, that how no one needs to know, no one has to know that if my child is having, say, depression or a learning disability. That is what I also mentioned earlier in the conversation, that how we are so scared all the time that that my child should not see my weaknesses, that I need to hide my vulnerabilities from my child. So I think one is that I would not blame the parents here absolutely, because it is largely coming from the cultural, the culturally built and influenced motion somehow. Yeah. The second thing is, when we talk about motivating children to go for assessment or testing. So, here I've observed something. Now, the reason most children are a little reluctant in going for assessment or therapy is because they are made to feel that there is something wrong with them, and then they are, like you pick them up. So imagine in a batch of 50, just picking 2 or 3 children that, you too need to be tested for something. It immediately makes them feel that, okay, we have been, put in like a odd spot. Like we are the odd ones out. So instead of normalizing this whole mental health concern, we are instead, igniting it to be something which is only specific to certain section of people. While if you actually start reading mental health disorders or mental health concerns, I'm sure you will self-diagnose yourself with at least a couple of disorders. I'm absolutely sure of that. So I think we have to stop doing this. We really have to, stop pick and choose, doing this pick and choose. I also work a lot with these NGOs and, organizations that deal with persons with disability. What we do is we do some kind of basic screening for all the kids. That's what I have been doing. Instead of asking just 2 or 3 children to come to me for testing, what I do is I tell everyone that everyone has to go through a basic screening, and then those whom I feel need a further screening, I do a little, detailed testing for those kids. But majorly how I do it, I make it mandatory that all this that even the teachers need to undertake the screening, so that no one feels marginalized. For that matter. So I think the focus should be normalized. Yeah.
I also liked how you started this saying that, they have to stop keeping up with the Joneses, or in this generation, keeping up with the Kardashians. They have to, this whole social media.
That's hard.
And that's absolutely. Harjeet, I hope you got your answer. I'm sorry I'm being a bit, cutting you short there, because we are going over time. And I do want to address one question, because I think it's very relevant and very important. We had the ability to have a social culture, because we were brought up going out and playing in the playground. And this generation in any case was very committed to their computers, and we had to actually push them out and say, you got to do the social bit of hanging out with people. And look what circumstances did to all of us. Is everybody there? Because my signal's kind of playing tricks.
Yeah, I can hear you, but it's frozen now.
Yeah. Go ahead, Charles.
I think she's frozen.
Okay, can you still hear me, Ridhima?
Yes.
Now you're back.
Yeah. It's perfect.
No, I think you all kind of. Can you hear me, Ridhima?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah. It's good.
Can you?
I can hear you.
Okay, so my question was. Okay, great. So my question was that do you think that this situation is going to have a long-term impact on the young adults as far as their need for hanging out socially is concerned? Do you think there's a long-term impact here?
I think we are already under the long-term impact. I mean, I don't see that the impact is yet to come. I think we are already under the impact.
Yeah.
But somehow how I see it is that after all, what was the need to resort to social media or a virtual reality medium? That's how I see it. I mean, I have mentioned it before also that after all, what was the need that the real world started looking so challenging to survive it? I am still finding the answer, but for some part of it, the answer that I have found is, I think because teenagers and young adults have started sensing a lot of judgmental attitudes around them. They feel that they are constantly under the radar. They are being constantly judged by their parents, by their peers, by their teachers. And there is all the time, there is an expectation to fulfill. And how to deal with that, because that's another important question. And I say this to most parents, please stop using the Y's with your kids, WHYY. So avoid using Y's in your conversation.
So I always say that the best piece of advice I've given my children, don't go out with the trap. Just hang in there.
Yeah, so instead of asking why, always approach the child's feeling as to what the child is feeling about that particular situation. I think I think that'll give you a better edge in healing with the issue.
Do you hold training sessions for parents?
Yeah, I was about to say, adults need therapy. It's actually not the children. I've realized that.
Yeah.
But Charlie,
I think most
I'm going to let Sonal say bye to you, because I think our signal is playing tricks, and plus we are like way over the time. Ridhima, we will have to bring you back on a show because there are so many questions that are coming up and we will want to address them. So we will want to bring you back. But for today, I think it's been super awesome. Sonal and Annie, would you like to say something to Ridhima before we sign off for the day?
Yeah, do make sure you create classes for adults. Please.
Also, a quick, Ridhima, if you can give a quick message to the parents, what would it be? The takeaway from
very
today's
quickly, in a nutshell.
I think the major takeaway that I would want all parents to have is that please take care of your own mental health before, because there is so much on your shoulders. Please be a little kind to yourself, because when you be kind to yourself, you understand what that kindness means to the kids. So I think give some time to yourself, take care of your own mental health first, and then think of taking care of the mental health of your child. So, yeah.
I think that's super. I'm going to reiterate what Ridhima said by saying that you all have given enough vitamin C to the children and taken care of the physical health. It is time to focus on communication. I think that is the key with your children, and that is the training for all of us parents, that if you talk to them, they will tell you. And they say that go out there and find out what your child wants and then advise them how to do it. That is the best way to bring up your children. And Dr. Ridhima, it was such a pleasure to have you on the show. Annie and Sonal,
thank you.
This camaraderie, it doesn't get better than this. You guys keep watching. Thank you to our loyal audience. We're very humble
Thank
that you
you.
join us every Tuesday, and we will keep entertaining you with new topics and giving you new insights. Thank you all for watching. This is bye from Annie, Sonal, Dr. Ridhima, and me, Yumi, and
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Suma. Bye, Annie. Bye. Bye,
Bye.
everyone watching. Bye.